Hello and welcome to another Which Bookie YouTube preview. I'm joined once again by Will Smith, and we are looking forward to Saturday's Cheltenham Trials Day fixture. 7 races on the card, 2 very juicy handicaps, and no less than 5 Grade 2s. And Constitution Hill's on the card, so it should be a good day's racing. Now, just for a little bit of housekeeping at the start of the show, do make sure you're subscribed to the channel and liking the video if you can. Subscribing to the channel will help you because we've got some more videos coming out, especially for the Cheltenham Festival. Even next week, it's the Dublin Racing Festival where we will be previewing, day 1 and day 2 in separate videos. So rather than it being one big slog, you should have, 20, 30-minute insight for each day's racing at the Dublin Racing Festival, because there are some absolute belters there. But there are some belters up this Saturday as well. So, Will, you're in your way to Wetherby, or you're at Wetherby. We're going to talk about Cheltenham, though. We're going to forget about anywhere else because the festival's just over 6 weeks away. Trials Day, historically, has given us pointers to winners towards the Cheltenham Festival. So fingers crossed we might be able to find a few of these. We'll crack on with it if that's right with you, Will. We'll start off with it's been shuffled around a little bit, but it's the time form novices handicap chase, the 1240 over 2 miles, 4.5 furlongs. We've not long got declarations in. Some of the markets have been reformed. So at the moment, it stands out that Jaguar for the John Joe O'Neill pair is 15-8 favourite. We've got Resplendent Grey in at 7-2, Massio in at 11-2, Guard Your Dreams 9-1, Ryan's Rocket 9-1, Whistle Stop Tour 10-1, 33-1 Walking on Air, and I missed out Billy the Real Big Red, who is 7-1 in there. So it looks a pretty good race, this one, to get stuck into. Some of the novices do go into the Olders handicap after, but was there anything you particularly liked in it?
Yeah, it's an interesting race, this, and as you say, the later race over the same course and distance, which is open to open company horses, as you say. And Imperial Saint actually has been declared in that race as opposed to this one. So he's out of this novice handicap chase. He'd have been certainly on the radar for this. It's a wide open contest for my mind. At the prices, I think those at the top of the market are about right, the likes of Resplendent Grey, Masaccio. And then Jaguar, of course, will be a horse that plenty of people will focus on in the JP McManus colours. He was running a good race at Uttoxeter last time out until making a hash of the last behind Jinko Blue, who, of course, went on and won at Windsor quite nicely. I think looking at his rating, if connections are eyeing up the novice handicap chase at the festival, he might just need to push up a few pounds to ensure that he definitely gets into that particular race. I mean, time will tell what kind of race that is, with it being an open ceiling for it, but he's very short, really. I'm happy to let him go and win at that kind of price that he is. There are 2 that are on my radar from regards an each way perspective: Guard Your Dreams and Billy the Real Big Red, Jaguar's stablemate. Actually, Guard Your Dreams is a very, very classy hurdler who has gradually taken to fences a little bit later, but he seems to be getting better with each chase start, and he's got a good bit of experience in here. Actually, he's running Paddy Power Gold Cups and all of those big 2.5 mile handicaps. And he can put that experience to good use, I'd have thought. I just wouldn't want the ground to get too soft for him. I think he is a better horse on better ground. And that's where Billy the Real Big Red comes in, because if it did get very soft with the rain on Friday, he would absolutely love it here. And he's just a real strong improver, Billy the Real Big Red. He's been impressive on his last couple of chase starts. Interesting that after Exeter, Connections or trainer Ollie Greenall and Josh Guerrero, they named this race as his next potential target. So the fact that they're eyeing up that race, they've obviously got Jaguar as well, but it was interesting that they had this in mind for Billy the Real Big Red, and I think there's more to come with him stepping up in trips. So a couple of each way prices there, and I'll probably play it depending on how the ground goes. If they don't get as much rain, then probably Guard Your Dreams. If they do get plenty, then Billy the Real Big Red.
Yeah, like that. And I echo a lot of your thoughts in there as well, because Jaguar's sort of obviously well handicapped, isn't he, with a couple of runs. Even Lowry's bar that he beat the time before. There's enough form lines in there to suggest that he's much better than his mark. But like you say, there is the question mark about him stepping into the festival with that novices handicap chase there. 15-8 about him short enough in it. I feel like if he was a bit of a bigger price, he'd rightly get backed in there. Resplendent Grey, I think the right thing for him to do is to step back in trip. That race against Highland, where they just didn't really go any pace, turned into a bit of a sprint. Springwell Bay was keen in that race. he was a bit of an eye catcher, wasn't he? But it was an eye
Mm.
catcher for probably the wrong reasons. He wasn't a 3 mile eye catcher. It's because he showed a bit of speed, I think. And then when they ran him behind handstands at Sandown, I think he was just the wrong favourite then again off the back of that Highland performance. But he just didn't jump very well at Sandown, and lots of horses can be like that. So I think this is sort of his trip. I wonder whether Ollie Murphy would probably just target this rather than waiting to go and win festival races. So that he might be one that's genuinely trying in here. The one that I thought was interesting at a big price, though, was, well, I said big price, it's about 9 to 1, 10 to 1 in a place, is Ryan's Rocket for Fergal O'Brien. He was favourite for a Persian War at the start of the season, and I fancied him for that race, but against my better judgment, because he ran in a bumper last season and he was miles out the back. And then the time after that, he only got beaten ahead by Fiercely Proud. So I was conscious that he probably needed his first run. Then they sent him back to Chepstow after 2 mile. I think it was a novices handicap chase where he jumped fine and he won quite nicely. Then the run after, he was pitched in against Iberico Lord that obviously didn't do things over fences, but he got beat that day. Jumped like really like arrow straight and like quite aggressive off the front. So I think in like this type of class handicap, stepping up and trip, it will suit him. But on the run in, the eventual winner sort of squished him. Lee Edwards pushed across him, so he's a bit short of room, and he was rallying again at the line. So I think this trip will suit him. Again, you don't know whether they're 100% trying on this one or they've got an eye into the festival. So there's definitely a few in there, isn't there? You can make a case for too many in here. But again, I'll say this in the video now, and I'll probably mention it a few more times. I'll put a link in the description for the link to the Which Bookie horse racing tips page, which is free tips. Me and Will update our tips on there every single day for anything that we fancy. So specifically for this one, if you check it out on Saturday morning or even Friday evening, you'll be able to see what our bets are come the race day. Right, we will move on to the 115, the Finesse. It's a grade 2. It's a good race as well, this one, Will. In the past, we've had a couple of Triumph Hurdle winners that won this. Defi de Soy, Peace and Co, I think's won it as well. Then we've had a few roguey ones. We had Apple Shakira won this before she was kicking gates out at Cheltenham. So East India Doc was favourite for a Triumph for quite a long period of time. Lalamba's obviously come out and dotted up. We've got East India Doc heading the market here, 10 to 11 for this race. Sauvignon for Paul Nicholls, Harry Cobden is in at 4 to 1. Stencil is in here at 6 to 1. Quantic Hills and Terrafima that dead heated for the Bowens last time out are both 10 to 1, and then it is 10 to 1 bar those. We've got Believe It and You Can, Galactic Charm, and then there's some bigger price ones in there as well. But I guess the key question really, Will, is ground at the moment we touched on was good. There's going to be a little bit of rain coming in there. I don't think it would have really caused any inconvenience to any of the horses that are going to run in here. But what has East India Doc got to do to be able to put himself back on the top of the Triumph Hurdle tree, or is that even possible after what Lilamba did?
Yeah, I don't think it's possible that he'll, even if he absolutely dotted up in this race by 20 lengths, I don't think he'd usurp Lilamba as Triumph favourite. For all that what East India Doc did before Christmas time at the track was mightily impressive, and on the clock it was mightily impressive as well. I think Lilamba now, just the groundswell of what he did the other day at Ascot, against some decent horses. Obviously a very classy ex-flat horse for the Moors, and Vianney, who's a good horse for Harry Derham. So I think that he has already beaten better horses potentially than what East India Doc takes on Saturday. Although that said, there's a little bit of an unknown quantity with regards to Sauvignon and Stencil, who are having first run for or on these shores for Current Connections. So I think East India Doc will win. I do, and I think he'll be a live player in the Triumph Hurdle. I wouldn't be sort of thinking, well, we need to back him now for the Triumph Hurdle because he's going short and loads. I think Lilamba will ensure that he doesn't. But I do think he's a solid rival for Lilamba, certainly. And with regards to this race, I think that most of the others, with all due respect to them, they're probably more Boodles projects, you'd imagine. A few of them have got handicap marks already. A few of them are running to try and get a handicap mark. I guess the one that might potentially be a flyer is Sauvignon, first start for Paul Nicholls. But I just think that perhaps, I mean, he's already got a mark in the high 130s. The way Paul Nicholls has kind of structured his seasons now, and particularly with regards to juveniles, it's gone are the days, I think, where he's sort of picked out one that has, run in February, late January time and gone and really surprised in the Triumph Hurdle market. I think he's probably one that they'll be looking as a long-term project. So for me, it's all about East India Doc. He's obviously a shade of odds on. I think that's about right, really. I can't really find too many angles in, I must admit, with regards to this race and also the Triumph Hurdle itself. So it'll probably be more of a watching brief and picking through which horses run well in behind for a potential Boodles bet.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I thought it was worth asking about that in terms of Viva favouritism, because this is a race that's worth 45 grand. It is a grade 2. And obviously, James Owen wants to have some top horses contending at the festival. I just trying to sort of play devil's advocate with whether they might decide 137, he can't beat Lulamba. Maybe if we accidentally get him beat in this race, we might be able to go and do something with him in the Boodles. But they're going to go over. Yeah, so would I. They're going to want to win this, aren't they? They're going to want to see his mark go up. So I think they're going to be trying 100%.
I think the owners as well. The owners want those grade 1 horses. You know, I think that's pretty clear for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree with you that there's a few in there. Sauvignon for me was a bit of a worry going this way round. That was due to go against Lulamba, but I think Harry Cobden and Paul Nicholls got together and decided against going against that and the Moor horse. Too deep a race, I think they probably thought, for no point in doing it really. It would have been a hiding place, but it's probably easier to hide in this grade 2, isn't it? And because he jumps out to the right, I think, in his French races, and he doesn't jump the best either. He's a bit scruffy, so I don't know. I can see them going soft on him. I think he's taken up too much of the market. Stencil's very interesting because the grade 3 that it was favourite for that he got beaten, the horse that won it, he slammed in a canter the time before. So he's one I think that, again, I know they could be trying for Boodles, but I feel like that's the one that would be really trying to get East India Dock. And then the ones that are in behind that, I feel like a bit of a muchness, but believe it and you can. I know Liam Swagger's a little bit of a rogue, but he did grind well to beat him and he's entitled to step forward. So he could be one that runs well at a price. But I don't really like these races playing for the each way money when I do just think that the favourite will go and win it. But for all that said, East India Dock at the price that he is, I think there's better even money shots even on this card. So we will move on. We'll move on to the 150, which brings us back to handicaps. It brings us back to, like you say, it's the same distance. This is the open handicap where we do have a pretty strong field. All 11 entries held their ground. We've got Iroko leading the market 100 to 30. Ginny's Destiny's next in. Top price 11 to 2 with Bet365, which won't be out probably by the time this is published, but 7 to 2 generally. Imperial Saint is 9 to 2 with Bet365, but 11 to 2 with some other firms. Soul Icons 6 to 1. Il Redoto's 9s. Gemaran's 10s. Moon d'Orange's 10s. Some Scopes 12s. Grandeur Dam is 16s. 25 to 1 for Torn and Frayed, and Happy Go Lucky. How old is he? 33 to 1 for this. So, Will, this is a race, right? I feel relatively confident that I've got this one absolutely nailed. So, rather than me teeing it up for you and telling you who's going to win this race,
go ahead.
I'd like to know if we're on the same sort of train of thought. So, as I say, there's like Iroko, Ginny's Destiny, Imperial Saint, Soul Icon that finally got his head in front, Il Redoto. Like, there's quite a few big names in there. Even Gemaran that obviously won recently at Cheltenham. How did you split these? Was it a race you were confident in?
No, Dave, I think you should go first. You sound as if you're
I mean, I can happily blitz this one if we want then. So
go ahead.
So I was very keen to take on Ginny's Destiny at the start of the season in that Paddy Power Gold Cup. 155. I wasn't so fussed about the mark, and we know how well he runs around Cheltenham, but we know what he's like at the start of the season. He just needs racing. So I couldn't believe that he stayed as favourite, and I can't believe he was strong enough to stay at 3 to 1 favourite for that race when surely there's smarter people in the world than me that could see that he couldn't win that day. Then they decided to send him right-handed to Huntingdon, where he doesn't go right-handed. He was like 65 lengths, I think, behind Marble Sands at the track before, because it's like quite a big sweeping bend at Huntingdon, isn't it? He didn't like it. Very much just looked to me like if you run him in a decent graded race, you might drop a couple of pounds. And if we run him somewhere where he can't win, it's just a good day out and it's good fitness for him. But back at Cheltenham was like a proper target for him, I think. So I was surprised that he was as big as 11 to 2. Like I say, he went off 3 to 1 for a Paddy Power Gold Cup. 7 to 2 generally is much more like it. There are some firms offering 4 places up for grabs as well. And I know people might think, well, his last 2 runs have been so bad that, you know, how could you possibly want to bet the horse? The Huntingdon run just put a line through it. We saw what Protectorat did when he was going the right way around in the Fleur de Lis and ridden with the right tactics. Ginny's Destiny in that race was probably against Jello and Protectorat. There was a question mark of who was going to go and force the issue. But Ginny's Destiny, they were quite happy to set out the back. He can be a bit more aggressive in here. So I feel like he has to be the bet. I feel like they must be trying in this race as well. Nicholls has won this race a couple of times in recent years. I think he did it with Frodon a few years back at least. And we know what Nicholls is like with targeting the festival. He doesn't really care about Cheltenham Festival specifically. He's happy just to pick up pots on the way. I think it makes sense for Ginny's Destiny to be trying in here. I think they thought about this after the Paddy Power went wrong, rather than thinking about coming back for the December Gold Cup. I think that would have just been too soon. They wanted to get runs into him. And Iroko, I get the hype around Iroko, but his best form is at 3 miles. This trip definitely isn't for him. I think he's the type of horse they talked about for like a Grand National. He'd be the type of horse you'd see maybe running in an Ultima on the way to going to a Grand National. And I don't see him winning this. I don't think he's good enough to win it on this, especially if the ground doesn't start to get too easy and it's sort of a fast ground race. Imperial Saint I do like as a horse, but I would imagine with it being his first look round Cheltenham, that course experience might just catch him out, and he potentially could be one that they're eyeing Cheltenham Festival, because Hobbs and White were going for a spell a couple of weeks ago where everything was winning, and then the last 10 days they've had a few, not dodgily beaten, but they've had a few that have not been winning as, like, I don't know, as confidently as you would expect some of the other ones. So I think this is still a nice pot for him to pick up, but I think this will be a horse that's prepping for there. And as I touched on with Soul Icon, he only got his head in front last time out for the first time over fences. If that now sparks him into doing bits, he could improve a little bit more, but I couldn't have it. Il Redoto, I think this is second string in here as well. I know like Freddie Gingle can go and win on him, but Ginny's Destiny is the number one. And Gemaran, for all that, won at Ascot and then won at Cheltenham after, just don't think it's very well handicapped anymore. So I think Ginny's Destiny will go off like 2-1 or shorter in this race. I reckon he'll absolutely get smashed up. That's my thoughts anyway. Will, do you want to add anything?
I don't think I need to add too much, because I'm very much of a similar train of thought. I must admit, I kind of, with this race and this horse, I have to detach myself a little bit with past thoughts and how I've viewed the horse and how I've played the horse. Because straight after last year's Turner's Novice Chase, the now no longer Turner's Novice Chase, I backed him for this year's Ryanair at 14-1, which at the time I thought, well, that's a brilliant bet. That's a really clever bet. Well done, Will. You've done well there, because you've got a horse who, on the same day as Protectorat, obviously the Ryanair Chase winner, I mean, he absolutely smoked the Ryanair field in terms of comparing the times between them. What Ginny's Destiny and Grey Dawning did in that Turner's Novice Chase absolutely wiped the floor with the Ryanair field, including the winner Protectorat and every other horse in that particular race. So at the time, I thought, well, Ginny's Destiny is going to be a horse who Paul Nicholls now will aim at that Ryanair. He'll sort of come through the season steadily. And I must admit, with the Paddy Power Gold Cup, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, that he sort of cut out as if something was perhaps amiss. So I was slightly worried with regard to that. But speaking to a few people who were there, they said he looked as big as the proverbial in the paddock. So maybe Nicholls is just going through the same process again with him. He's bringing him on from run to run. The Huntingdon run, actually, when you look at it back again, I thought it was a good run, actually, in respect to what he did last season. His second run last season on the clock in the Peterborough, I know it's a different track, etc., but standard times, he actually outperformed his second run last year in this year's Peterborough Chase. So stepping forward again, obviously on Saturday, I think he could lead this field a merry dance, as you said. They need to get a bit more rain just to make the ground, on the softer side for him, because I do think he slightly prefers that. But I mean, most of these in here are rated within half a stone of him, which, to my mind, on his peak effort, Ginny's Destiny is about 2 stone better than most of this field, I must admit. And he is available in places at 25-1 each way, non-run and no bet for the Ryanair Chase. Having advised and bet him at 14-1, I'm finding it hard not to actually go in again at that particular price, given it's a non-run and no bet situation. If he blows out, it's going to be money back. If he goes and wins well, he's going to be a bit shorter. I stand by the assessment that I made of this horse last season, and I'm just hoping that Nicholls is pulling off one of his masterclasses here, where he goes quiet on a horse and then suddenly exclaims to everyone after the race, after he goes and wins it, that he was on at 25-1 and that it was a mad price, like he did with the Hennessy winner this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, and I think that's fair as well, because when we talk about horses having their Cheltenham targets after, he's a 152 rating now. Like I say, he's been dropped a few pounds since the start of the season. But if he did go and win this race, a handicap is going to put you up £7 minimum, which forces him into a graded race anyway. And as you say, the start of the season, they would have been thinking he's a Ryanair project. So they're still ending up in the same place. They're just having to go through a slightly different route, aren't they? I think it's important to mention as well, he won the novices handicap chase at this meeting last year, didn't he? So, like, it's a time of year and all that sort of stuff. There does need to be a bit more rain for him, I guess. But he won a bumper on good ground, so it's not going to temper my enthusiasm completely. Right, I could waffle about that race for the rest of the day probably, but it would just be talking about Ginny's Destiny, and it's probably not worth it anymore. So we'll move on back to graded racing. We've got like just nothing but wall-to-wall bangers coming out now. We've got the Cotswold Chase. It is a grade 2, but we've got horses like L'Homme Pressé in here, who is like remarkably third in a King George because of the conditions of the race, getting weight from, well, a couple of runners in this field. So getting £6 from Gentleman's Game, who's the second favourite, 11-4. So I'll just go back to L'Homme Pressé is about, well, it says 11-8 here, but I'm not sure if that is still available. Chantry House is third in the betting at 8-1. Stage Stars 10-1. Delta Works 25-1, and Tommy Bow is 66-1. So it's a small, compact field in here. And I think, although over the years in the Cotswold Chase, we have had a few, I don't want to say bad renewals. We've had a few races that have looked grade 2 standard. This has got a few horses in there, especially like L'Homme Pressé, third and a King George coming in here, that, you know, they're worthy of being grade 1 horses. So how did you see this one panning out? Is it as simple as L'Homme Pressé just wins?
No, I think Gentleman's Game is a worthy rival for him. With L'Homme Pressé, well, from a personal perspective, a betting perspective, I'm slightly disappointed Capodanno hasn't been declared, because I thought he'd been quite a nice each-way player against L'Homme Pressé, because he is a strong stayer at the trip. You know, this is a extended, very nearly the Gold Cup trip at Cheltenham. And with L'Homme Pressé, I'm not 100% convinced that he stays strongly beyond 3 miles. I think he's one of those horses where he's run well in King George's. You know, he's run well at a bare 3 miles before. He's run well beyond, you know, that. He ran well in the Gold Cup last year, but he was on fumes coming down the straight last year. So I think he'll get away with it in this field. I do. I think he'll probably go and win, because that was a cracking effort in the King George behind Ilete Francais and Banbridge. And I just wonder whether Gentleman's Game has quite got the natural pace that L'Homme Pressé has got to be able to get him into the realms where it's going to test the stamina really, really strongly. It'll be fascinating what Darragh Keefe does on Gentleman's Game, because I do think he's a stronger stayer, but not quite as good a horse. So tactically, it'll be fascinating. But I just think L'Homme Pressé will get away with the trip because of the class edge that he has got, and the fact that he'll step forward quite markedly, imagine, from that King George run.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And obviously getting £6 from Gentleman's Game as well, when he doesn't even need it on official ratings, is hard to dismiss. And on that Gold Cup run as well, like I say, he was on fumes, and he definitely was, but Gentleman's Game was pulled up in that Gold Cup. So, I mean, I know he's got bits of form in there, but I mean, happy to look stupid, but I can't possibly see Gentleman's Game actually winning this race. Then the same is probably true for, like, Chantry House wasn't even supposed to win last time out. He's an 11-year-old. I know he's won this in the past, but it's like it's an afterthought, isn't it? And it's almost a case of, let's desperately run him in a race and see if we can make him not finish so well. And I'm not saying they would be doing that, but I couldn't bet him. I don't think anyone could, even if they had some money on him last time out, just rolling it up. Delta Works 12 now. Tommy Bowes like a 10-year-old that's just completely and utterly outclassed in here. The one that I will look for, because I do think L'Homme Pressé is a good thing, especially when we talk about the price of East India Dock at the start, who again should be like a worthy short price favourite. I'd argue that L'Homme Pressé is probably a better bet, even if they're both around about the even money shot, just because Brown Advisory winner, 4th in that Gold Cup, 3rd in a King George recently, it's a pot worth winning at 70 grand, isn't it? But Stage Star, I've long said this about the horse, that while he continues to run okay at 2.5 miles, they are starving this horse of fulfilling his potential, because he is bred to want 3 miles. His mum won the Grade 2 Warfield at Ascot when that was over 2 miles, 7.5. She was sent off favourite for the Grade 1 3-miler at Aintree. She was sent off 8-1 behind Big Bucks. His dad as well, Fame and Glory. There's multiple staying horses in there. I think if you look at the next best rated horses on the progeny part of the Racing Post, you've got Home by the Lees in there. You've got Commander of Fleet. You've got Foxy Jacks that won across country at this track. You've got the Nice Guy that won 2 Grade 1 novice hurdles. And with Stage Star, they've obviously had big success with him at the middle trip, but every single run over obstacles has been about the middle trip. And his last couple of runs, especially that run at Aintree when he was behind Melodrama, I thought he ran really well. His mark was a hard one to go and win a handicap like that off. He just looked like a horse that maybe, I don't think he's like lacking speed or anything. He just looks like a horse that now wants to go out and trip. He's a 9-year-old. I think it's the time to do it with him. It is obviously going to be a bit of an experiment. We don't know how it's going to be. And then going up against a horse like L'Homme Pressé, that is a Grade 1 horse at this trip, is going to be very difficult for him to go and take the scalp of that. But the fact that he's 10-1 in the outright market, I just wonder if he might be 3 or even 4 to 1 behind L'Homme in the betting without the favourite market. And I could see every reason for a horse like Gentleman's Game that pulled up in a Gold Cup here might just not like Cheltenham or the travelling over to this particular track. Chantry House could just be an absolute blob. Tommy Bow can't be anywhere near him, and Delta Work is old enough to smoke, and I don't know what they're really doing with him. So I feel like Stage Star just looks at the prices like an absolute bet. If he was priced at sort of 4 or 5 to 1 here, I don't think people had turned their noses up too much at that. And I think he is definitely bred to want the trip as well. So who knows? It could be a good weekend for Paul Nicholls. But for all intents and purposes, if you just want to know who wins the race, L'Homme will win this. But Stage Star has got to be the fly in the ointment, in my opinion. Right. We will continue to move on. It's the 3 o'clock, just as the football's kicking off. Constitution Hill will spare, 3 minutes and 20 seconds of your time if he goes and does another track record. It's a race we don't really need to spend very much time on, I imagine, Will, because Lossie Mouse not come over. I think it may be that she was never planning on coming over. I'd rather her go to the Dublin Race Festival, which obviously we'll talk about in the previews next week, because that makes that Irish champion hurdle much more informative. And I know people would have liked to see Lossie Muff have another crack at Constitution Hill, especially in a race that she won last year. But I think they learnt enough last time at Kempton that if you can't beat a horse that galloped badly a few weeks before, was reported to be not very well a few weeks before, and you can't get anywhere near him then, what's the point in doing the same thing again and expecting a different result? So if Constitution Hill wasn't coming here, I would have thought they'd come back to defend with it being a weak enough race. But who knows? Maybe they want to test her back over in Ireland. But there just isn't any reason why Constitution Hill gets beaten here, is there, Will?
No. No, I don't. Unless he puts in one of his characteristic leaps over the hurdles where he takes off about 3 strides before and still seems to glide over it and find a leg and just gets it slightly wrong. God forbid that were to happen. But I think that's probably the only way that he does get beat. Sadly, obviously, without Lossie Mouth coming over, which I don't, I'm not surprised about given the forecast on Friday. They wouldn't want to be travelling any horses over, really, given the storm that's going to hit on Friday. So, yeah, look, Constitution Hill probably goes and wins. I do think this might be an interesting race to look at with the without prices once they are properly formed, because Brentford Hope is the clear second favourite, which on ratings and recent form you can just about agree with, although I expected to see a bit more from him at Windsor the other day. And he's always a horse that I've felt is, because of that flat speed, just wonder whether 2 miles won at Cheltenham on the new course with rain softened ground, it might just be that his stamina is just ebbing away, close home here. And I thought maybe Feast Dudaris for Gordon Elliott. I think this is he's a horse who they've often thrown into these grade 1s and small field graded races to try and pick up a bit of prize money, etc. And I think he'll probably be ridden to come home strongly. He does stay 2 miles, 2 miles plus pretty strongly, handles soft ground. I think you can forgive him the pulled up effort last time out because it was over fences. He's never been the most natural chaser. And if you go back to the run before, obviously behind Brighter Days Ahead, he's in there, mixing it with State Man and Winter Fog. Now, State Man wasn't 100%, clearly, but Winter Fog is now, a 150s animal. So I think Feast Dudaris has run to a good level that day, for all that whatever you think of State Man. And if he runs to that level again, then he's not got much to find, if anything at all, with Brentford Hope. I think the other option might be Spirits Bay as well, but I just wonder with the Twiston Davies camp, they're more keen often to try and go and put their stamp on a race slightly earlier and not sort of ride as cold to try and pick up pieces, which is, whichever way you cut it, either way can work, the Oracle. I just wonder whether Feast Dudaris might be the horse who just sneaks through late on and picks up a few pieces and might run into second. So he might be an option in the without market.
Yeah, that's a smart shout as well, because Brentford Hope's got cheap pieces on for the first time as well, isn't it? And it is that quick turnaround. And you think fifth place will get you $3.5 grand. It will cover what it's cost them to experiment and find out what the cheap pieces do. Could just be bit of public scoring, even though we're not allowed to say that. So interesting one there. I mean, I'll definitely just sit back and watch it. I really hope Constitution Hill just dots up, because his best efforts for me have always been like in the stiff finishes, like a Sandown and Cheltenham's what he's done there in the past. And I was impressed with what he did at Kempton. I know loads of people seem to be poo-pooing it, but you can't knock the king.
I think it was a massive effort.
Yeah, considering everything that happened in the run-up to it as well. It's mad, isn't it? But
yeah,
each to their own. Like I said, it sets it up nicely that we don't know what's going to happen until March now with Lossiemouth, etc. When they go against each other in the Dublin Race Festival, they'll sort of start to make a bit of a pecking order. But happy days. I'm happy.
Well, that
with
could
the
be
way
a hell of a race
now.
now. As a result, that Irish Champion hurdle, State Man, Amsterdam, Lossiemouth, brighter days ahead. There's your champion hurdle without Constitution Hill.
I think Amsterdam might go to the Limestone Loud on Sunday though, because he's got an entry in there, and it looks so weak that they would probably be stupid not to go there. But I thought he'd go to the Dublin Race Festival initially, but looks like they're going down the Espoir de Land route. Right, we've sidetracked. We've started talking about the Dublin Race Festival preview. We will continue back at Cheltenham. Cleve Hurdle. I love this race. The only time I don't love this race, or the only time I didn't love this race, was I went to back Big Bucks when he made his comeback and he got beat. And I swore to myself, Will, if he doesn't win this race, I'm not betting him in Cheltenham for the stayers. He got beat, didn't he? And then I followed him for the stayers. So this always has been a pointer towards the stayers. Whether we're going to find the winner or not just depends on whether you've got a horse like Big Bucks, Paisley Park, or Thistlecrack in here. I don't know if we have. Tiapu's obviously there to be shot at in that stairs market because he does look a standout contender, but he did get turned over by Lossiemouth, didn't he, at the start of the season. When you look at the bunch that are in behind here, I was desperate to see Lucky Place run, Will, because I think the horse is like maybe not, I don't want to say like a live outsider for the stairs because he's like 14s now. He's shortened up quite a bit, but he just looked like the type of progressive horse that something's going to have to come from nowhere to do it. Maybe Nicky Henderson's waiting with him, thinks he's better fresh for it, but I was just disappointed that he wasn't in here. I'd have fancied him stepping up to 3 miles. But we have got Crambo, who won the long walk hurdle recently. That's back-to-back long walks for him. He's currently 9-4 head in the betting. Strong Leader was, I think, was he 11-8 or 11-10 favourite for that long walk hurdle? Never travelled in the race, never ran any sort of race. He's had a wind up. He's 5-2 second favourite. We've got Gal Road third in at 5-1, Monmouth 8-1, and then it's 14-1 bar. So I think this race I can probably sum this up quite quickly on my views of it. Strong Leader, I thought, would win the long walk. Probably felt stupid after when he didn't travel in the race, and then Crambo goes and wins it. And you look at the price he was and think he was just an absolute each-way freebie, considering he goes so well fresh. But I didn't like what he did in the stairs hurdle last year. I know they said over the summer they found a couple of problems with him, but I've got a big trust issue with Crambo, I suppose, when it comes to this particular race. Strong Leader, once bitten, twice shy, I feel like with him. He could go and do bits here, but Ollie Murphy's already said before this race, he's like, we probably will just run at Aintree regardless of this. The Aintree race is worth probably probably worth 4 times the amount that this is, I think. I think it's 140,000 that race. This is a 40 grand race. I just think Strong Leader will be using this as a stepping stone for Aintree. For all that he ran well in it last year, and he could definitely win this, but, I've got a question mark about him. The only way I could see an in this, and I think you're in agreement, having read your column earlier in the week, but I think Gal Road, getting the £6 that he gets from those two, his last 3 runs have all been 145. We know what we get with him at Cheltenham. They've run sort of like low 150s in their best efforts, Strong Leader and Crambo, and they haven't come at this track. I mean, Crambo got a 150 in that stairs hurdle. Strong Leader got a 150 in the Cleve last year. But there's question marks, like I say, about Strong Leader this time, and Crambo in that stairs. Maybe his RPR was inflated because it was the stairs hurdle. But Galroyd hasn't got much to find, does he? He looks like a free each way swing. But I just look at him and think, I don't know if he's actually going to win the race. So then I think there's no point having a bet in it. But I think you like the idea of Galroyd being like a good each way bet. We've still got 8 runners in the field, so that 3 places will stand. Are you still leaning that way?
Yeah, very much so. I'm doing a bit of a rain dance as well for him because I do think that soft ground really plays to his strengths. I see him as I think his stamina is assured at 3 miles. I know a few elements perhaps suggest that he doesn't quite see it out as strongly, but I just think that's on the way that certain races have panned out for him. I do think on soft ground where he can travel away at the tempo that he's gone on good ground, it'll get other horses in behind out of their comfort zone. And I think he'll be the one that's still galloping away up that hill on soft ground. I think Crambo and Strong Leader, they're not horses to me that either enjoy soft ground or enjoy Cheltenham. So if it did rain plenty and we've got good to soft at the very least, then I'd be quite strongly against both of those really at this particular unique test. Whereas Gal Road, you can, set your watch by him really. He's run a number of cracking races this year. I think, as you mentioned, Lucky Place last time out, he was done for a bit of speed by Lucky Place. I think in that Relkeel hurdle, he was still galloping on. He'd have wanted to go out again on another circuit had they not had to go up the run in that rail keel hurdle. And I think that might just be perhaps the best and most relevant piece of recent form, Gal Rhodes. I just think he's rock solid, like I said. And the one thing with him actually that's held him back from being a very top-notch hurdler is his jumping. He's clattered hurdles all throughout his hurdle career. He did go chasing, but that was aborted. And actually in that rail kill last time out, dare I say it, touch wood, he actually jumped the best I've seen him jump. So it might be that he's just finally cottoning on and not maturing, because he's a mature horse, but he's just figuring out, well, okay, it's much easier if I just get over these a bit more fluently rather than trying to kick them out of the way, maybe. And that could play a massive factor as well. If he continues that thread with his jumping, I think he's a real rock solid each way option here. I'd have him hot on the heels of the other two in terms of favouritism if I were to price up the race.
Yep. And then we'll just have to be careful if there are any non-runners, because like I say, it's dead 8 at the moment. I'm sure some firms, if it gets down to 7 runners, will still potentially pay the 3. But obviously we're advising this Thursday. The weather looks like there could be plenty of rain, but if there's not and it is faster ground, be fine for him, but it might put a couple of others off. Yeah, so we'll see how that field holds up. These are where you prefer it when there's sort of 11, isn't it? Because then you know where you are with the place terms. You're happy with getting 3 places. It's just the dead 8's always fraught with danger, especially when we've got weather warnings flying out there. Right. We will move on to the last race, Will. It's the final grade 2 of the card. It is the Classic Novices Hurdle. This is another one that has seen some good horses in the past go and win this before, well, trying their hand at the Cheltenham Festival. Let's just put it that way. Now, Potter's Charm heads the market at even money. I alluded to earlier that Long Press is about that price. East India Doc's about that price. So we've got 3 shorties. So I will ask you the obvious question in a second. Bill Joyce is second favourite, 3-1, also carrying a graded penalty. Quebecois 5-1. He was behind him in that Winter Novices Hurdle, behind Bill Joyce at Sandown. 6 Mile Bridge for Fergal O'Brien and Keenan Woods is 10-1. It's 14-1 bar those. Potter's Charm, Will, I imagine you'd be happy to say that this horse probably just wins the race. And if that is so, of those 3 sort of even money pokes, East India Doc, Long Presse and Potter's Charm, could you argue that Potter's Charm is the best of the 3 of them?
Oh, I actually think he's probably the worst.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, well, just because. So with Long Presse and East India Doc, I know East India Doc's in a juvenile hurdle, so we don't fully know what the opposition can do. But I think we know enough that East India Doc is the clear best horse on what he did last time. I think Long Presse is the clear best horse in the Cotswold. I think with regards to Potter's Charm, he's set a very good level, hasn't he? He's very, very good. But there's a few horses in here that have been highly talked about and have produced performances that are just simmering under Potter's Charm. The likes of Bill Joyce, Quebecois, 6 Mile Bridge, I think is a sneakily good horse waiting to happen. So I don't. Yeah, I'm not convinced he should be quite as short as he is. I can see why he is, but I was quite taken by what Bill Joyce has done so far this season. I think he perhaps just went half a stride too quick in the Challow hurdle on the front end. I think he just set things up a little bit for New Lion that day, and Wendigo, who came through and picked up pieces for second, was held up out the back as well. So I think he was better than the bare form there, and he was impressive at Sandown. And like I said, 6 Mile Bridge, I think he's one of those that, because he's not been beating much, we don't quite know, but I think he could be a live player as well. So I think if you've got that short price treble on during the day, it'd be one of those obvious ones to, if the first 2 win, I'm never a cash out man generally and have the option to do it. But if that was open to you, I'd probably be certainly thinking about it. But look, he's clearly a good horse, and good luck to them trying to win another grade 2. And clearly they've taken the view that it's not all about the Cheltenham Festival, which is great, because it does provide us with another good clash on Saturday. But I'd be probably looking to take him on at around the even money mark. Not massively, but certainly looking at other options.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's the key thing with it. When you've got a horse that is the slap bang even money, you can have him running for you, or you can have all 6 of those. Like you say, plenty unexposed horses that have already done some reasonable things by their standard. They'll be on an upward trajectory. I was like quite disappointed with Bill Joyce and that Challow hurdle, and it might turn out that the new one is just an absolute weapon, and I'm being harsh on that Wendigo horse that finished second. But I thought Bill Joyce should have been really going close in that race if he was going to be considered as this type of horse. And he was in the River Don as well. They entered him, wasn't it, over 3 miles. So I'm a bit concerned that John Joe doesn't know what he's doing with Bill Joyce at the minute. And you look at Bill Joyce, Quebecois, and 6 Mile Bridge, they're all running that champion bumper. They're all quite close to each other in the finish there. Their ratings and figures now are all pretty much of a muchness. The £5 that Bill Joyce has got to give Quebecois, I think it brings all of them like a bit too close to each other. I do think Potter's Charm's just stand out. I was hoping there was going to be more from him in that Tolworth. I know it was foggy and misty and we couldn't really work out what was going on. But when he went into the mist for the last time on the home straight, I thought Miami Magic had him beat. And then when they came out of the clouds, my heart felt good because I'd had a reasonable bet on him that Potter's Charm was rallying and getting it done. But I felt like it was Sam Twister-Davis in the finish, getting the horse going, and like it was a nice aggressive ride. It just, you know, you just sometimes get those good horses that just win at the different distances. I just look back and look at like a Ballyburn or a Foreheen. Ballyburn's probably a bad example after getting slammed by Sagino, but you know those horses that win those
races. That's no disgrace, though, is it?
No, well, exactly. But they could do it at 2.5, and they could do it at 2, is what I mean. So he lacks that little bit of speed from that perspective, but he's obviously got course form here as well. I think he is just the best one. Like, I don't see Potter's Charm getting beat. But without being rude to the rest of the horses in here, I think it's just because he hasn't got too much to beat at this stage. I think all of them will be nice horses in time, but Quebecois was pretty bad at Sandown, I thought, in that last one. Bill Joyce disappointed me last time out, and I think 6 Mile Bridge has got a bit too much to find at the moment. So that's the beauty of horse racing, Will, isn't it? You'll be laying Potter's Charm, and I'll be having it. So we can just split the difference between us instead of using the firms. But thank you very much for your time, Will. I know you've got stuff to do, so we'll let you go. As I've mentioned at the start of the show, we'll be back the next Thursday and Friday. We'll get them out for day 1 and day 2 Dublin Race Festival. There's going to be some fantastic racing on offer there. There's some big prize money up for grabs. So that festival is very much not all about the Cheltenham Festival. There will be targeting races there. Hopefully we'll find you some of the winners. Again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you like the video. Drop a comment if you fancy anything this weekend, and we will see you all again next week.